Hi there. Today we're going to try cooking with Kernza. Kernza is a grain. It is a lower gluten wheatgrass, and it's entirely new to me, and probably a lot of you too. Kernza is also pretty cool, and I'm going to tell you why. But first, hi, my name is Val. I made the website Very Vegan Val. Welcome back to my channel. So what makes Kernza so cool? Well, it's a perennial. In our modern system of agriculture, we plant a crop, harvest the crop, and then till the field. Plants, during their growing season, spend the time collecting carbon dioxide and trapping it beneath the soil. Now, carbon dioxide is one of the main contributors to global warming. Because of that, when plants trap it below the soil, it's not in our atmosphere and it's not contributing to global warming. However, when farmers then till up the soil to plant next year's crop, they're releasing all of that CO2 right back into the atmosphere. This is how Kernza is different. It's a perennial plant, which means that you do not need to plant it every year. The root systems go deep into the earth, and the same crop can grow year after year. That means that Kernza and other perennial plants are able to more permanently sequester carbon. This is important because about 25% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from our food production. By actively taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and sequestering it, Kernza could actually be doing a net positive for the earth. And it's edible, although I've never tried it. So that's what we're gonna do today. Today, I'm gonna be using Kernza and Kernza flour to make sort of like a rice substitute and some Kernza cookies and to see how they go. Now, this is not like a particularly refined Kernza flour, so I think it's gonna have more of like a whole wheat type texture and taste. Additionally, because it's low gluten, Kernza might not be the best option for, say, bread. You could use it as like part of your loaf, but I think that it won't have the right amount of structure to make an entirely Kernza loaf. I'm also not an expert bread maker though, so I'm happy to hear if others have tried it and what their experience was. I'm going to make a small batch of the chocolate chip cookies that I usually make, but I'm going to substitute the all-purpose flour with Kernza flour. Starting off with a 1/4 cup of vegan butter and adding about 1/2 cup of brown sugar. I'm using a light brown sugar because that's what I have, but usually I'd use a darker brown sugar. And we're just going to smash them together well. You could use an electric beater here. It will be quicker and get your butter fluffier, but I never do. Next, we'll add a splash of vanilla extract and a tablespoon of oat milk. And let's do about 1/2 tablespoon of miso paste. I really love adding miso paste to desserts. It adds almost like a caramelly flavor to them. Plus it gives that bit of salt that you really need to enhance your flavors. A cup of our Kernza flour. I think you can really see the texture of it here. It's definitely more of that whole grain texture. 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder and about 1/2 tablespoon of cornstarch. Let's mix it all together. And then for the chocolate in our chocolate chip cookies, you just want to measure with your heart. My heart usually says a lot of chocolate chips. So I can say just from looking at this dough that it has a different texture to the cookies I normally make. I guess maybe the best way to describe it is it has a lot more texture than the cookies I normally make. You can see a lot more like ridges and crooks and crannies. Usually it would be a lot more smooth, so I'm curious to see how that's going to impact the taste. I like to make these into fairly big cookies, like that. And this makes a pretty small batch. So we're gonna roll them into cookies, plop them down on our baking sheet with lots of room in between them, and bake at 350 for about 15 minutes. To cook our whole grain Kernza, we're just gonna rinse it off and then cook 1 cup with 1.5 cups of water. They say it'll take about 45 minutes at a simmer. We're gonna add some salt in there too, of course. You can see that the rinsing process has brought a bunch of sort of like straw, dried grassy bits to the top. So we're just gonna rinse those off because those are not the bits we want to eat. Now Kernza isn't all sunshine and rainbows. Some of the downsides are that currently it's actually copyrighted and can't just be freely grown. Probably because of that, it's also on the more expensive side. I bought a pound of Kernza and a pound of Kernza flour, and it cost me about $20. There aren't a lot of options on who to buy it from. And without dragging this company through the mud, it did take almost a month and a half for my order to get to me. And I never heard back when I reached out via email and social media to see if my order was even coming. So, I mean, it did come, but I will say, like, the ability to buy Kernza is limited. And now for the moment that I personally have been waiting for, it's time for tasting. We're gonna start off with our cookie. They look about how they normally do. I would say that there's a little bit more lumps and bumps and grooves and cracks and textures on the top, but not too dissimilar. There definitely is more texture there. More almost like grittiness, almost like an oatmeal raisin cookie. You know, it has that like, that bite to it. This has that bite. And it's also like a little bit more chewy, I think. The flavor is subtly different. It's a little bit nuttier, a little bit more whole grain vibes, but not substantially different. Overall, I would say a wonderful cookie. I imagine, I don't know if you can get a more refined Kernza flour at the moment, but I imagine if you could get something that would be more similar to an all-purpose flour cookie. As is, this is a bit whole grain, and yeah, it's quite delicious. Here is our Kernza as a grain. We cooked it just like rice until it had absorbed all the moisture. I think the brown, almost a little bit reddish color is really beautiful. It does have a little bit of a nutty flavor, but it's not horribly flavorful. The texture is kind of like wild rice or wheat berries or rye berries if you've had them. It has that little bit of a bite and a bounce to it, although it's fairly soft. You could definitely use that like rice, but I have a lot of salad dressing. I think I'm gonna just make a quick salad. Start with our Kernza, and I'm gonna add about a quarter head of cauliflower, and we'll just chop it up well. I've got a bunch of parsley that could really afford to be used, so I'm just gonna chop it up. And I use the stems and the leaves because the stems are just as flavorful, if not more so than the leaves. And you save a lot of time by not picking all the leaves off individually. Tomato. Next, we're gonna do about half an onion. And then I'm just gonna top with this probiotic tangy salad dressing. I made that in this other video, which you can see over here. In addition, we'll add the juice of about half a lemon for some extra brightness, black pepper, some salt. Oh, you know what I have? Dry mint. I think I'm gonna add some of that. We already had our dessert, so let's try this salad. Excellent. The Kernza is a perfect vehicle for this salad. It gives you that chew, that resistance, and then you get the crunch of the cauliflower, flavor from the mint and from the parsley, as well as onion, the dressing, lemon. I do actually have one more Kernza product to try. So another thing that Kernza has been suggested to be used in is beer. And we have got a non-alcoholic Kernza beer from Deschutes, actually, to try today. This beer has rye, barley, and Kernza in it. It's got a stunning color. And if you haven't tried non-alcoholic beer in the last 5 or 10 years, give it another go because they've gotten a lot better. Cheers. Yeah, that's a good beer. I'm not really sure if I taste the Kernza in it per se, but I'm definitely not distracted by it, and it's a pleasant drinking experience. Very crisp, got a good amount of bitterness to it, definitely enjoyable. My final thoughts on Kernza are that it's pretty easy to cook with, pretty easy to bake with. I don't know that it could be a full wheat replacement because it doesn't have the gluten content, but as a partial wheat replacement, perfect. And anything that is helping to combat climate change is great in my book. However, as it is now, Kernza is relatively unaffordable and inaccessible. There would need to be a lot of improvement both in the price of Kernza and in your ability to procure it before I think it would be a viable option for most home cooks to be able to turn to. Let me know if you've cooked with Kernza before, especially if you've made bread with it. I'm very interested to know how that went. Until next time, like this video and subscribe. Bye-bye. Some food for thought. Person A is struggling to get the resources they need to survive. Person B has all the resources they need to survive. In fact, they have enough resources to take care of hundreds of thousands of people for the entirety of their lifespan, and they continue to suck more out of our society. Which one are you calling a parasite?